There is a major problem out there for most government employees. We're talking teachers, secretaries, bus drivers, even administration. And I'm talking about the 403B. Now, let me stop you right there. If you're not sure what those numbers or letters mean, we're talking about putting money away for your retirement, but being burned, lied to, and in a lot of ways, losing the potential to retire in a way that you've planned all along, and also maybe even extending that retirement years into the future. So today, I'm going to share with you a very special interview with Barb Besal. She is the host of an amazing podcast series called Learned by Being Burned, and it exposes all of the issues and the problems with teacher retirement. And this applies to my nurses out there, nurse practitioners. We're talking most government employees, they don't have what we call a 401k. They would have access to something else like a 403b. And there are barely any regulations that are kind of looking out for their best interests. We're talking, slimy salespeople, like giving them free pizza or sandwiches, and then all of a sudden locking them into these terrible, like insurance products, or essentially retirement plans, products that aren't really all they're cracked up to be. So please, I'm going to ask you during this interview, of course, to listen to that podcast and to pass this along to a friend, but also, please consider joining our private Discord group. It is completely free. And don't forget to drop a like for this video. All right, let's not leave Barb waiting. She's ready to go. Barb, welcome to the show. I'm very excited to have you here.
Thank you.
Yeah, let's jump right into being burned. Where do you want to start? Can you tell us your burn story with this 403B?
I'm a multiple time burn victim, unfortunately. So I'm really happy to be spreading this message as with myself as the example. At the beginning of the 2010s, sometime in there, like 2011, 2012, I had was just walking through my school and met up with a sales agent in the foyer of our library. I had no intentions of really doing anything, but she caught my eye. And the reason she caught my eye was because she just reminded me of like one of my roommates from college. And, she was talking about investing. And I thought, like, this sounds like a good idea. I need to save more for my future. I can't really rely on the pension, Social Security. Who knows what that's going to look like? And so I signed up for a 403B and, went with this company of all companies just because she reminded me of someone I knew. And that's really a sound financial decision. So I got pulled in, thought I was doing great things for my future, setting away, a couple $100 a month. And then, as the years went by, of course, in the 2010 through like 2019 timeframe, I mean, all the market's doing is going up, having like one of the biggest bull runs in a long time. And my account balance wasn't doing that. And it was sometime in the middle of all that I found that out. Also, my account had changed hands a couple of times in that time frame, and I never really heard from anybody who picked up my account after this woman who I signed up with for, sentimental reasons, I guess. And so I just, when I realized some of those things, I thought, I can't, this doesn't seem right. Something seems amiss here.
Especially with the returns being so low. But I think that over, let's say, the past 2 years, maybe having quote unquote sales agents on the campus have become maybe a little less frequent, but there's probably many teachers out there that had a similar experience. For me, I'll share mine quickly. There was just some man in a nice blue suit who said, knock, knock, knock. It's, 4 o'clock, 4:15. I'm staying late the first year. He's helping a teacher down the hall and he wanted to talk to me about retirement. And I wanted nothing of it just because I was so stressed out after a long day. And it seemed kind of weird that he was like allowed to walk around the building. Do you have any experiences about these sales agents like on campus, or like any warnings for people that might still see these people kind of floating around?
Oh my gosh, do I ever. We actually had a special connection because one of our frequent flyer sales agents had kids at the school. So every time we had a faculty meeting, I mean, at least 2 or 3 times a year, he'd take the microphone from the principal and would say, "Hey, I'm here to talk about retirement, and come sign up with me. And I love this school, and I love all you teachers, and you've taught all my kids." And so, yeah, I mean, I'm really familiar with the people who can just tug at your heartstrings to get you on board. The only advice I can say is don't don't make the mistake I did, which is, looking at someone and saying, "Oh, you remind me of a friend," or, "Oh, sure, you're a parent of a student, really, really well trusted family," and I mean, not that they don't, love the school or care about the teachers, but if you knew what they were selling you, you wouldn't think they did.
Exactly. And when you are new, or even if you maybe are just uneducated about like financial literacy, you go and you might call the person at district office at HR and say, "Who is this man?" Like, trying to do your due diligence. "Oh, that's Mr. So and so. He takes care of everyone's money. He buys sandwiches every year." If you hear that sort of thing, I would say run. Because the only people that can afford to walk around campus and to buy sandwiches or give away free pizza are people that are making sales commissions off of you, usually without you even knowing. Uh,
Oh,
it's like deceitful and shouldn't happen, but it does.
yeah, it's like the most expensive free lunch you'll ever get, I mean, hundreds of thousands of dollars. And I mean, I got taken for a ride twice actually. After my account changed hands to a new guy, I mean, he came in and talked to me about reallocating and things like that, and then brought up whole life insurance and convinced me, a 33-ish year old single person with no kids, that I needed whole life insurance. And I bit it. I really did. I mean, I got burned pretty hard the second time. And when I found out about 18 months in that I was paying $100 a month, and that my surrender value for that, with, after I said, "I don't want this anymore. This wasn't a good idea from the beginning." My surrender check came in and it was like $43 or something like that after giving
Wow.
them $1,800. I mean, that guy must have been driving a new car for what, this commission that he got on that sale from me. Oh yeah.
Well, so many people, I think they initially sign up and it's that small amount, the $50, $100, and it is for their future.
Mhm.
So, uh, again, we're doing a lot of like warnings here, but what would you say to somebody who is looking ahead to the future and they're interested in signing up? What's Again, I know we're probably get the suggestions later, but can you at
Yeah.
least like preview what you would suggest?
Yeah, absolutely. There are some districts that have good 403Bs. There aren't many, but there are some that do. So, call your HR, and as best you can find out the list of who your vendors are. If you've got a single vendor, that's probably a pretty good sign. If you've got a list of a dozen or more vendors, that might be something to be really cautious about. At 403bwise.org, there's a really great vendor list where the vendors are listed out: green, yellow, red. Green, go. These vendors are really reliable. Yellow, some caution. There might be some good products, some not so great products. And red typically means to avoid them. Although in some cases, we've seen even those red vendors can offer a decent product if they're the only vendor in the school system. So that would be one thing to check out: is who are the vendors. There's also other options than a 403B. I mean, so many other options. Go for an IRA, a Roth IRA. Those typically have really low fees. And although you can't contribute as much per year, not a lot of teachers take advantage of the federal maximum anyway. We just don't make that much money. So the lower fees that those provide through something like a Vanguard or a T. Rowe Price would be a great option. And then there's state-run 457s, which are also typically really great. I know here in Virginia, we've got a really great state-run 457, which is a wonderful alternative to a 403B.
Yeah, same here in New York. We have an amazing 457, and you probably won't hear much about that until you Google or hop on YouTube and look up 457. But
Mhm.
once you do, there's a lot of pros and cons. So I would encourage everybody to do that when they're ready, when they have the time and that unique free time. But but one of the things we got on our list here is kind of retrospective for you. You mentioned wasting time in the sense where you were saving, but because of fees, surrender charges, your money really wasn't growing the way it could. Could you just talk a little bit about like what to look for if somebody has already unfortunately signed up and they might have to worry about these same sort of things, fees, wasting their time, looking ahead?
Oh yeah, and I've talked to a few teachers already who are in that position. Looking ahead, they know now that they're in a bad product. They didn't know that before. And after having some conversations with me and actually listening to this podcast, they realize, oh man, I got taken for a ride too. I got burned. And so what I tell them is that the first thing you want to do is like call that customer service number. Don't call your sales representative because they're going to try and keep you in that product. But call that customer service number and just ask them, hey, what fees am I paying? What exactly are just get some knowledge that way, right? What fees am I paying for these products? What are the surrender fees? Give me my all-in costs kind of thing. And then, I did something as simple as hop on just like the bankrate.com calculator for like future value and say, okay, if the market stayed at, if I made no returns for the next like 3 years, and that, my fees are 2 or 3%, what would that do to my account balance? If it's going to go down by $500 a year, that's $1,500 I'm going to give this company of my money, over the next 3 years. Versus what are the surrender charges? Well, if they were only going to charge me $1,200 to get out, that's a no-brainer. I'm going to get out now and pay that surrender cost as opposed to, keep giving them incremental amounts of my money. So, something like that, just arming yourself with that knowledge is probably the best thing you can do. And it just takes a call. And the people at the customer service lines, for as shifty as we think the sales agents are, the people at customer service are just there to give you information. So it's a really great idea to just pick up the phone and call them and say, what exactly am I paying for here? And they'll tell you honestly.
And they will. And one of the things that I would say is just bring your like emotional toolbox with you, because if you find out that you're in a bad product or you're in a product with high fees and a product with surrender charges, you're going to then feel like angry, and you're going to have to process those emotions, and then again bring that toolbox. How can you deal with that? And sometimes there's that denial, like it's like, really, let me call that agent again and just find out. But what I would say is, once you actually know that this is something that is detrimental to your future, it's hindering your retirement, maybe even delaying it, elongating like how many years you have to work, then you turn to the resource that you talked about earlier, like a 403b wise Facebook group or a website, and you find, if necessary, low cost providers or a way to get out of a bad 403b, which is, let's be honest, easier said than done. It's a process that so many people in our community have written about, experienced, and it is almost like it is designed to get you to stop. So again, coming full circle with that toolbox analogy, just know that you're gonna got to keep on keeping on. You got that stamina. You're not going to give up.
Yeah, I'm really
I
glad you
guess
mentioned.
follow up question to that.
Mhm.
Yeah, I want to know, have you come across any success stories about people, you know what I mean, escaping a bad product,
I'm a success story.
yourself included?
I'm happy to mention. Yeah, I was able to get out of my old bad product through a weird conduit of ways, and I've helped a few friends in my district start moving their money out of their old product and into something better. And I'm really glad you mentioned the Facebook group, the 403B Wise Facebook group, because it can be really daunting sometimes just to pick up that phone, and maybe you don't know what questions you need to ask, things like that. But there is a wealth of information in this community that they will be happy. Anybody would be happy to say, hey, here are 5 questions you should ask. And if they tell you this,
Yeah.
run. And if they tell you that, well, then consider staying. I mean, there's so much guidance to be had just within our own community of trusted folks. So don't feel like you have to go out there alone.
And when you say community of trusted folks, I got to say that I don't know when you joined, and there was hundreds of people, which I thought was really cool.
Mhm.
And now I think by the time somebody listens to this, there could be 10,000,
Oh, yeah.
tens of thousands, depending on how far in the future. So you're not the first to walk this path. If you're hearing this for the first time, you can get through it, get out of it, and then get yourself on the right path. So I wanted to know a little bit more about this podcast that I previewed in the intro. I don't want to mess up the title, so it's burned by. No, you go ahead. You say it.
It's learned by being burned. Teachers in the K through 12 403B, and there's every teacher that I know who's listened to it so far has identified with the story. I mean, we are all burn victims, and we just don't recognize that it's our own story until we hear it sometimes.
Yeah, well, by the time people are watching this, they can go and on all major podcast players look up the full season. So maybe you can just give us a little overview, like how many episodes, about how long, what can people expect to learn each step of the way?
Absolutely. It's a 5 episode series. Each episode runs about 30 minutes. And what it is it's a woven canvas of teacher interviews. And I just sort of connect those through narration. So it's very accessible. You'll hear a lot of teachers. It's not a lot of jargon. And if there is, it's me usually explaining what that is. But a lot of teachers talking in very relatable terms about some of the things you just heard me talk about those sales agents coming on to campus, about signing up, about realizing, oh my gosh, what am I'm not seeing the returns that I should be seeing. It's about how fees eat up so many teachers' retirement funds. It's about what school districts and unions and the government are not doing to protect us and what they could be doing instead, and the moves that we need to make in the future to fix this problem. So it really, the 5 episodes run the arc of identifying the source of the problem all the way to the potential solutions.
hmm Now, full disclosure, I've listened to about half of it so far. So, is there any sort of call to action that you would want somebody to do if they're watching this interview or and have listened, or when they're done listening? This is what we need.
Yeah. We need school districts and unions to step up. So if you're in a strong union state, you need to contact your union and have them understand they're fighting so many fights, but they need to understand that this is an important one. So contact your union representatives, let them know about this problem, and make it something that they take a stand on. Your school districts may or may not be as helpful, and that also may depend on how strong of a union you have. But one of the best things that school districts can do right now is to move towards a single vendor. That is, they put their plan out to bid, and these companies have to fight each other for the business of the school district, and that forces them to bring down their fees. We're seeing some industry companies doing this that are typically offering horrible products, but because when they have to like bid for the district's business, they bring down their fees a lot, and they actually become reasonably good products. That actually happened in my district 2 years ago, 3 years ago almost now. So we have a much better situation this year in my district than we have had in the past, because one of those red light vendors, one of the ones who's not so reputable elsewhere in the country, had to bring down their fees to get our business. So one of my biggest calls to action would be to say, open your mouth and tell the folks who can lobby for you that we need to go this direction. We need to put our plan out to bid and make them compete for us because we're worth it.
Yeah, awesome. So, a couple of recaps. We'll put our teaching cap on here. Listen to the podcast and have some like time to digest. I would say you could binge it too if you want, like if you take a long walk. But there's certain stages of understanding like why it is and why it's always kind of been this way. Number two, maybe look at your own investment options, whether you are currently investing or whether you're looking to, especially if you have access to something that is low cost, like a single vendor, a 457, or maybe even that Roth IRA. If those are like new terms for you, maybe do a little education. And then that big call to action, dive into the Facebook group, start helping other teachers, get this message out there louder, talk to your union, maybe talk to your district, and then run with it.
Yeah,
How'd I
absolutely.
do? How'd I do?
That's great. I would caution you, if you're driving when you listen to this podcast, it might induce road rage. So please be careful out there when you hear this story. You
Yeah,
might want to clench your fists a little bit.
maybe save it for like an airplane. You
Yeah.
could be like, I'm gonna need a drink. This is unbelievable. But well, before we sign off, I'm gonna do a couple of call to actions myself. But where can people follow you and your work? Maybe mention that Facebook group and the podcast. Where can they find everything?
Yeah, the Facebook group is 403bwise.org. It's a closed group, so you have to only be let in by host administrators. They will ask you a few questions just to vet you, make sure that you're not one of those sneaky industry reps trying to get in. So definitely through 403bwise.org, and the corresponding Facebook group. And then you can find the podcast on any major podcast network, on Apple, on Spotify, on Amazon, and any of the above. For me personally, I'm not so much on the socials, but if you reach out to the guys at 403 BWise, they can definitely connect you to me.
Awesome. Any more voiceover work
Oh,
coming
I
your
hope
way?
so. This is actually my first one ever, and it's so much fun.
Well, you did a fantastic job. You stole the show, so
Thank you.
job well done. Well, guys, I'm going to leave a link down below in the description to everything we've talked about. And if you like this kind of episode, please don't forget to like this video and also hit subscribe and ring that notification bell. All right, guys, as always, I'm Rich, and until next time.